Now, before we close, we've got to go cover the pages that we skipped, and I did it this way in this order on purpose because it sits in the backdrop of all of our New Testament. It sits in the backdrop of all of this intertestamental period or the silent years. So if you turn back with me to page 162, remember Daniel is in exile. This is before their return. He's reading Jeremiah and he's looking. He's going, man, it seems like the 70 years of our exile are almost over. And he prays, Lord, we have sinned. Gabriel, the angel, shows up and he gives him a message. But he gives him a message that is so much bigger than Daniel was expecting. It essentially, and I'm going to try to draw out this chart, seeing it all at once on page 163 can be really confusing. So before we look at the chart, let's look at the passage in Daniel chapter 9. Remember, he's reading Jeremiah. 70 years is the length of the exile. So what Daniel is expecting, and we'll kind of draw this out, Daniel is expecting a 70-year exile. That's his expectation. But Gabriel shows up and says, in fact, Daniel, hey, it's actually going to be worse than that. Yes, that 70 years is ended, but in fact, it's going to be a 70 times 7 kind of exile. So you've experienced the 70-year exile. However, there's a 70 times 7 exile that is yet to come. At the end, we're going to see some really cool things. At the end of this 70 times 7 period, we're going to see the kingdom return. But where we find ourselves right now is the 70 is almost over, but Gabriel shows up and says, hey, Daniel, don't get too excited. Yes, some of the Jews will return back to their land. But now it's as if God is saying there's a 70 times 7. Now let's look at page 162. Here's what we're getting at. Daniel 9, verse 24. 70, but not just 70. Now it's 70 times 7. And when you see the word 7 there put in quotations, the question becomes 77 what? And like what is the sevens? And because the context has been years, most people think that all of this is going to be 70 times 7 years. In other words, 490 years. Or we might just say a longer exile than you're expecting. A longer exile is coming. You think it's just 70, but it's going to be longer than you expect. Now notice what it says. 77, so 70 times 7, are decreed for, notice, your people, the Jews, and your holy city, Jerusalem. Now notice what he says. At the end of this 70 times 7 period, notice these things are going to happen. You can put little number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Number 1, the decree is to do these things. Number 1, to finish transgression. That's cool. Number 2, to put an end to sin. That's awesome. Number 3, to atone for wickedness. Wow, Daniel, this is awesome. Number 4, to bring in everlasting righteousness. Amazing. Number 5, to seal up vision and prophecy. Number 6, to anoint the most holy place. So there's a 70 times 7 that is expected, and then we might say the blessing of God is coming. And that blessing of God that is coming is often in the form of what we might call God's kingdom. God is coming and He's bringing all of these awesome things. So what does Gabriel say? Verse 25. Know and understand this. This is so cool. From the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the Anointed One, the ruler comes, there will be 7 and 62. So 7 plus 62 equals 69 of our units of 7. So 69 sevens are going to take place. And at the end of that 69 7, it says, the Anointed One is coming. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Daniel, get excited. By the way, this thing that's being translated for us as Anointed One, that is the Hebrew word Mashiach, which is where we get our word Messiah. Messiah just means Anointed One. Remember, we've been looking in our story all along. Remember, we've been building this as we've been going. There's a promise to Adam that God has made, and then a promise to Abraham that God has made. And then he made a promise that one day the ruling scepter will not depart from Judah until he, the one to whom it belongs, shall come. And we saw that there's going to be a kingdom with David, that this kingdom will have no end and it will last forever. And we're seeing this idea built and built and built. And now in Daniel 7, we're seeing an anointed one who is coming, a Messiah who is coming. The anticipation of this figure is this person called Messiah, a third person, a third person singular pronoun, a he is coming. And the entire story of the Old Testament has been anticipating this question, where is or who is the snake crusher? And here Daniel is told, at the end of 69 7-year periods, we're going to see the anointed one come. Now notice what it says. The city will be, you're going to hear of an issuing of a decree. So you're going to hear a decree. When you hear a decree to restore and rebuild, then you can start the clock on the 69 sevens. When you hear this decree, start the clock. Now notice what he says. The people, says it will be rebuilt, the city of Jerusalem will be rebuilt at this decree with streets and a trench, but in times of trouble. After the 62 weeks, so the second of these little units, so we have 7 and 62, so 69. After the 62 sevens, the anointed one, this is not what Daniel's expecting. The anointed one will be cut off, it says, and will have nothing. Cut off, have nothing. The people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. This is not what we want. I thought this was going to be all good things. You said a whole bunch of good things, a bunch of blessings of God were coming. The anointed one was coming, but now he's going to be cut off and the city is going to be destroyed. The end will come like a flood. War will continue until the end, and desolations have been decreed. This he, by the way, is the ruler who will come and destroy the city, will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. So there's 1 week that's left over down here. 1 7-year period that's left over. And this seems to be where this prince who destroys is covenanting with God's people. And this prince who destroys will do some terrible things. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. On the wings and on a wing of the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. Okay, let's try to put all this together. Daniel's expecting a 70-year exile. Gabriel shows up and says it's going to be longer than you think. It's going to be a 70 times 7-year exile. But after 69 weeks, the blessing is coming. He's going to restore, he's going to put an end to sin, bring in everlasting righteousness, awesome things. But it's going to come through a cut off or a crushed Messiah. And here's what's so cool to me. And this is just how I think the Bible just gets more and more awesome the deeper we dive into it. Remember what it said. When you hear the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, you're going to see 69 of those 7-year periods go by. Okay? So what decree are we talking about? Where's the decree? Where's it at? Come on. What do you have in mind? Come on, Gabriel, tell us what it is. And this is why your Old Testament will be obsessive about recording for you and for me decrees to go and rebuild Jerusalem. We're going to have 2 that are really significant. The first is going to be given to Ezra to return and rebuild. The second one is going to be given to Nehemiah. The first one is given to Zerubbabel. Remember? Zerubbabel. To return and rebuild the temple. The Zerubbabel decree is given in 538. The Nehemiah decree is given in 444. Now, here's what's so fascinating. If you take the Nehemiah decree in 444 BC, where Artaxerxes says, fine, go back and rebuild, awesome, whatever. If you take the way that the Jews figure out the way they measure their year, which is with a lunar calendar instead of a solar calendar, the issuing of that decree in 444, and if you give that 69 7-year periods, so 69 times 7 lunar years, from 444 to 69 times 7 lunar years brings us to 33 AD, which just so happens to be when Jesus, our Messiah, walks into Jerusalem, declares himself the king, and is cut off and has nothing. And if you look on page 163, this is Harold Honer's work to give you all of that in a really kind of confusing looking chart. That's what this chart is trying to make sense of. The decree is issued in 444, go rebuild. And what we're going to see is 69 times 7 years brings us to 33 AD. And it just so happens in that exact year, to the date, Messiah walks into Jerusalem and is cut off and has nothing. The Bible is just so incredible as all the pieces begin to fit together. And this Daniel prophecy explains why at the time of Jesus, they're anticipating the arrival of Messiah. Messiah is coming. Messiah is coming. They're looking for him. They're looking for him at the Zerubbabel with that dating and at the Nehemiah dating. There's a fervor of excitement because the Messiah is expected to come. And when we turn the pages to our New Testament, we're going to see the Messiah has announced himself, but he's going to announce a different kind of kingdom than they're expecting. And that announcement is what sits in the backdrop of so much of what Jesus says and does. But we're going to turn to the life of Christ as we continue in our series next.